Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I am delighted to welcome, for a second time, an accomplished entrepreneur and an author from Pune, India, Sirisha Bhamidipati. Sirisha, welcome to the
Thank
show.
you so much, Ashutosh. Thanks for that.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, Sirisha, we had a big conversation about your journey in our first episode, and those of you who are interested in looking it, just search for Sirisha's name on the brand called You. Today, we're going to speak about her book, but Sirisha's introduction. She's the co-founder of Aligned by Design, and she's the co-author of Hope is Not a Strategy. So, before we get to your book, just by way of introduction, Sirisha, you have an extensive background in consulting, organization design, and leadership development. What led you to co-found Aligned by Design?
Yeah. A slightly long story, but
Sure.
it'll actually tell you how Aligned by Design was born. First 15 years of my career was in the corporate. I had
Yeah.
fantastic mentors, worked in big companies, so got a lot of exposure. But working in large companies always made it, some parts of it are constraint free. Right, it's a lot of decision paralysis that happens, but a lot of it is constraint free. You were never constrained on
Right.
resources, time, money, skills, everything,
Hmm.
right? And 2015, I got the Fulbright scholarship. So Government of India gives 14 people every year
Yeah.
scholarship to go and do a fellowship in leadership and management at Carnegie Mellon.
Hmm.
So 2015, I got that. And that was a juncture where, I was a senior director at a big IT company. And I was questioning a lot of things in terms of why do
Hmm.
we have these command and control structures?
Hmm.
Why do we have, all of these, you know, uh, very specific, very focused team structures and defined leadership structures and things like that. Why can't organizations just evolve?
Hmm.
And that is where my area of research, when I went there, was around holocracy.
Hmm.
Holocracy is the other end of management model where you don't have structures.
Hmm.
Right, companies like Zappos and all do it. The advantage of the fellowship was I could go and intern with any company in the
Hmm.
US that I wanted while I was studying there.
Hmm.
And so I interned with Zappos, and my guide, Dr. Robert Kelly, actually got me connected to a lot of companies there just to go observe how things work in companies
Hmm.
and why
Hmm.
structures help and why structures don't help. That was when I got actually opportunity to work with small and big companies in the US. And looking at that, you realize that the importance that is given to culture there was far higher
Hmm.
than what it was in back home in India.
Hmm.
And culture was not just about a plaque on the wall or some celebrations happening in the office, but culture was about how unified and aligned they were when they were making decisions, how
Okay.
unified and aligned they were in doing something. So, for instance, you look at customer centricity. Any company that is talking about customer centricity had everybody in the office talk in the same vein, right? It could be the guy in the production, guy in customer support, it could be the lady taking care of their finances. Everybody
Hmm.
spoke in the same vein.
Hmm.
So that got me to understand the power of culture. So I went to study one, and then it blew up into a much larger thing. So I
Amazing.
came back
Hmm.
and I tried implementing some of those back in the corporate world. And then I realized that one other thing that I noticed, which I didn't realize it earlier, but that I realized when I came back, was there was no concept of resource abundance, right? People were very judicious because I also interned there with smaller companies. I realized
Yeah.
people were very judicious about their resources. And that's when I came back, I realized implementing some of these in smaller companies is what is going to be the game changer, because
Hmm.
scaling journey is hard.
Yeah.
But culture alignment and having a very clear strategy and having an execution roadmap in spite of all the constraints
Hmm.
is what is going to help companies grow.
Amazing.
So
Hmm.
that's why I said, okay, let's go and experiment. So I moved out of the corporate world, started off as an independent consultant working with a few companies, helping them scale.
Mm.
Then my co-founder Harish, who's also my life partner.
Mm.
So Harish was also working on his own. He had his own venture where they were helping drive the right culture in companies.
Mhm.
So we said, why not marry these two?
Okay.
Where we will help companies define their culture that is aligned to their strategy, that'll help them grow, and we partner with them in the journey because they don't have that resource abundance. We partner with them in their journey. We've managed P&L scale businesses, so we know how this
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
So let's go work with smaller companies and actually help them scale and create success stories.
Amazing.
So that is
Amazing.
how Align by Design was born.
What a fascinating story. And maybe sometime in the next few months, I'll speak to Harish on culture. I'm a very great believer in culture and how important it is. But Sirisha, now let's come to your book, Hope is Not a Strategy. And I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Sirisha's book, Hope is Not a Strategy. So let me start with my first question. What inspired you to write Hope is Not a Strategy? And why do you believe hope alone is not sufficient to build successful organizations?
Yeah. So when we started working with companies, right, we realized there's a huge think, say, do gap, right? There's a
Correct.
lot of thinking happening, lot of conversations happening.
Yeah.
Thinking almost always seems in the right direction,
Hmm.
but when it comes to actually saying, a lot of things are broken down
Yeah.
along the way. And
Hmm.
when it comes to doing, people are doing something else because obviously there
Correct.
is a huge communication gap. Whatever they're thinking, they're not actually implementing. And we realized when we were working with younger organizations, and this happens even with the biggest companies, right? But they can still survive. In younger companies, this huge think, say, do gap was actually breaking companies down. Now, are they not planning for it? No, that's not right. Every company has a strategy in place. But why do only some succeed? Why not the others, right?
Hmm.
So, the more you minimize the think, say, do gap,
Hmm.
the easier it is, or the greater are the chances that the company will succeed.
Well said.
And that is where we said hope is not enough. You have to be very deliberate in the decisions that you make so that whatever you're thinking is actually translating to action. And that is when you will not have too much of misalignment. That is when you will not have, people getting confused. That is when you will not have unhappy people. Everybody knows what needs to be done. Everybody is aligned on how you want to do it. And that is where we said hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
You cannot just keep hoping
Correct.
and assume everything will happen. You need to
Absolutely.
deliberately work towards making it
Abs-
happen.
Very well said. And what is the dilemmas resolution framework that both of you have developed?
Yeah. So the seed of it was born again during the Fulbright Fellowship. So a lot of this, uh, I am very grateful for getting that opportunity to go study there.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, Culture is not. There's nothing right or wrong about culture, right?
Correct.
Culture
Correct.
is always a set of dilemmas, right?
Hmm.
And why I call it a dilemma is there's no right or wrong, and both have their pros and cons.
Hmm.
What given your context, you need to pick the option that is the
Absolutely.
best
Hmm.
thing to pick,
Hmm.
right? So for instance, one of the dilemmas you'll think of when you think of a growing company is, do you want to operate like a pro sports team or a happy family?
Hmm.
Right, instantly people will, most of the founders we've spoken to will say, oh, I want to operate like a pro sports team and we're going to go out and get there. But then we start asking them a lot of questions about, okay, in a pro sports team everybody has a very defined role to play, and if
Hmm.
you don't fit that role, right, you'll be off the team and
Correct.
somebody else who's better than you will take your place there.
Hmm.
In a happy family, together you achieve what you want to achieve,
Hmm.
right? It's a collective, so you will compensate for each other's inefficiencies, but you work together as a team. There's a lot more harmony,
Hmm.
right? Now it's not that one is better than the other.
Hmm.
It's about who you want to be and you actually stick to it. If you say you want to be a pro sports team, you have to be a super objective meritocratic organization, filled with candor, where you're actually telling what you want to do,
Hmm.
and people know that the onus of staying relevant is mine. In
Very.
a happy family setting, you
Hmm.
want to jointly get to your objective.
Hmm.
Same, a similar thing we see in when we talk about, let's say, customer satisfaction or customer delight,
Hmm.
right? People often interchange and use it, but customer satisfaction means doing what the customer is asking you
Right.
for,
Right.
right? Meeting that expectation. Customer delight is going out of your way to solve a problem for the customer. Now, if you actually look at it, each of these will require you to hire different sets of people with
Mm,
different skill set, different thought process,
mm,
right? The amount of overrun that you will have maybe on your cost when you actually go to create delight
mm,
could be very different compared to an organization aiming for satisfaction.
mm,
But you loosely use the word saying we're out there to delight our customers, but all
mm.
you're doing is only meeting
Absolutely.
expectations.
Absolutely.
So we said all of these actually
Mm,
have an impact on your culture unless you call out what is very important for you, right? You cannot build the culture that you want, and so we created this dilemmas resolution framework.
mm.
It's an output of 7 years of work, research work that Harish and I put into it,
Right.
and where we were talking to companies, testing these out, testing all the dilemmas that we are creating, tested it out with different companies, and then came up with this final set of 60, which are again, each of them can be broken down to a lot more dilemmas. But what we talk about the dilemma resolution framework in the book is look at those dilemmas. Every dilemma has a lot of questions for you to ask. Know where you are. Do that same thing with your leadership team. Then
Mm,
you actually get to understand who is it that you want to be. The
mm.
moment that clarity is there, everybody in the organization is aligned.
Well said. Well said.
And that is the dilemma's resolution framework.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question for you, Sirisha, is that you also say that one step in building culture is defining purpose and identity. Why is this the first step, and how can leaders get this right?
Yeah. Why purpose is important is that's your true North Star, right?
Correct.
It gives you direction. Purpose helps you a lot in driving alignment.
Correct.
If you say that I want to become a unicorn, that's just a milestone in the
Yeah.
journey, right? But that is not what you're doing. We define purpose as what is it that you're doing that's going to make a dent in the world. It's not, it's beyond you. It's, the change that you're bringing in, right?
Mm.
And that is where a lot of personal value systems align with the organization values, right? That's the, true north that people align and want to be a part of that company.
Mm.
And so that defines the why. Why do we exist, right?
Absolutely. Mm.
And along with that, identity is important. Identity is when I get there, what do I want to stand for along this journey?
Mm.
In if I draw a parallel to an individual, right? It's like writing your own obituary,
Mm.
right? What do you want people to remember you for? People won't remember the ecology of one awards you won. They remember the person you are, right? So it's, for individuals, when you do this exercise of telling them to write three words that describe you,
Mm.
right? And that's how everybody will remember you
Correct.
when you're no more,
Yeah.
right? So like that, identity is the same thing for the company, saying what do you want to stand for while
Mm.
you're pursuing this? What do you want to stand for? Which aligns to your own value system.
Mm.
These are two very important things because this helps you get the right people.
Mm.
And getting this right early on is even more important
Absolutely.
because you get people who are more aligned to what you want to do.
Mm. Very interesting. And again, based on all the work that both of you have been doing, what are some signs that an organization's culture might be broken or misaligned?
From from an organization standpoint, the fact that you're having more people but you're not growing
Mm.
is a clear sign that it's the culture is broken inside, right? There either it is lack of alignment, either it is lack of clarity, because people are never bad. People don't. It's not that you'll have a group of people who don't want to perform. It's
Mm.
just different people pulling the company in different direction
True.
because
True.
there is lack of alignment. So
Mm.
that's a clear indicator you're not able to grow, you're not able to scale, in
Mm.
spite of having a checklist of things done,
Mm.
right? The second thing is unhappy organization, which means there's a lot of stress in the organization, which translates to either people leaving, which translates to your poor NPS scores, which translates to people talking about burnout. So those are those indicators. Those are the subtle indicators which show you that the culture is broken.
Mm.
So you're making huge investments, you're not able to scale, and you are trying to do everything for your people. You're doing your employee engagement programs, you are giving perks, rewards, recognition, but still people are unhappy.
Correct.
These are two big indicators.
Amazing. Amazing. And this is for, say, reasonably large or companies that are well settled. This is also this age of startups. And I very often heard startup founders say that the rules don't apply to me, I'm the owner. So, my question to you is, for early stage startups, what are some key cultural practices they can adopt to set a strong foundation?
Yeah. So, yeah, bang on in terms of, founder defining the rules. And that's how the early stage companies are. So, we
Correct.
typically work with companies on their 1 to 10 journey, growth journey, right? Where the product market fit is done, they've been making good amount of revenue, and now they want to scale. So, we often hear this story. Or we often see these traits, where companies, founders, culture, and that's what we call the founder culture. Because initially, when the company is starting, it's about your close knit team that you get on
Yeah.
board, right? The first few people are like the founding team, right? And it's the founder culture. It's about what the founder believes in. It's about what you want to achieve, and it's a lot of hustle also, because
Mm,
there it's not about roles and responsibilities, but it's about getting things done,
mm,
right? So that adrenaline rush actually gets the company through. But when you want to start scaling from there, it's also important for the founder to spell out what they're expecting,
mm,
because your first level of people that you get in already know how you work,
mm.
because you're working very closely. You're all sitting
True.
together and working with
Mm,
each other. As
mm,
you scale, as each of your immediate team starts getting their next in line, already there is a break in communication that happens, right?
mm.
Because they're not working with
Yeah.
you closely. So that's important to call out. So there's nothing wrong about a founder culture.
Mm,
Uh, but the founder needs to call out what is the expectation.
mm,
And also, that is the right point for them to zoom out and see, is it aligned to my strategy? Again, this is a phase where we see a lot of founders coming to us and saying, you know what, we've copied the Google values. Or I worked with Google earlier and I like the Google values. Or
yeah.
I worked with Microsoft and this is what I want to do in my company also.
Mm, mm.
Now, that's the biggest mistake you do at that
Correct.
stage, according to us, because what worked in one context may not work in your context. And
Absolutely.
that is where, if strategy defines how you want to grow the business, culture defines how things will work when nobody is watching.
Absolutely.
And alignment between these two is extremely critical.
Mm, mm,
So that is where it's important for the founders to zoom out, to
mm,
actually see, okay, if this is the company that I want to build,
mm,
what is the kind of culture that we want in the company?
mm.
And periodically we tell companies when their context changes, right? Either they've gone through an episode of funding, which will change their direction or strategy, or they're expanding into newer geographies. We tell them just pause, see what you have already defined as your culture, see
Yeah.
it is, if it is still aligned,
Mm,
and spell it out.
mm.
Reinforcement is the most critical thing after defining the culture.
Correct. Correct. Great response. My next question is that, your book also talks about culture begins on day one. And you just give you an example of some of the practices founders should adopt from the beginning. Why do you believe there is a resistance, to use your own term, in the founder culture, um, especially in a country like India, when there is, everyone is wanting to, do well, everyone wants to work hard and move ahead. So
Uh, it
why has
is,
this founders
yeah.
culture come about?
Uh, it is not resistance. It is not lack of culture. I think a lot of it is lack of articulation.
Okay.
Okay. You expect people to do something
Mm,
and something else happens. Now, the
mm,
easiest way is one is articulation, two is reinforcement.
mm,
And culture is not where you're going to do a town hall once in a month and talk about it, right? Culture has to seep into everything
right.
that's happening in the organization,
Yeah.
because it's all about how people behave when nobody is watching, right?
Mm,
So when I'm onboarding someone into the organization, to how are we dealing with each other in a meeting, how are we handling ourselves in a conflict situation, how are decisions being made, what will happen if I do something wrong in this company, all of that
mm.
reflects
Yeah.
your culture,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
unless you articulate or unless you start role modeling that
Mm,
behavior,
mm,
it is not going to work,
mm,
right? A good way of reinforcement is telling. A even better way of reinforcement is the power of role models and stories.
Mm,
You know, role models initially because somebody has to demonstrate that behavior, saying, hey, this is how we're going to treat every individual in the company.
mm,
This is how we're going to behave with each other. Two, over a period of time, you'll have a lot of these culture stories emerging,
right.
right? A new joiner talking about the experience of speaking to the founder of the company.
Mm,
For him or her, that could be the most exciting day in their corporate life when they
yes.
actually get to sit across the table with the CEO and have a word,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you have a lot of these core values and culture emerge in the form of stories.
Mm,
Nothing more powerful than that.
mm,
So that is where from day one articulate, spell out what is the kind of company that you want to build, and that emerges from your identity, and constantly keep reinforcing it, role modeling it, and make sure every action in the company reflects that culture.
amazing. Amazing. Thank you. I have time for two more questions for you, Surecha. Um, in again today's day and age, especially when you look at global organizations which have got cultures that are defined by the geography that they're in, and then on top of that, the um, office of the future or work of the future is beginning to talk of hybrid work and work from home, etc. How do leaders manage to ensure culture is similar across not just a city or a country, but across the world?
I think a fantastic question and a very important point for all companies that are growing,
Yeah.
right?
Mm,
One is, you know, I, I'll probably just zoom out and talk about values
mm,
in a company, right? Values are not nice sounding words.
yeah,
It's not restricted to the plaque at the entry of the office, right?
absolutely.
But values are very core to your company,
Mm,
right? I want to, strive for delight. I want to make sure there is a growth for everyone.
mm,
Those become your values. And as you try defining your culture, your core values will emerge. And what will also emerge are your non-negotiable values. Non-negotiable values are what I will never compromise on, right? It's a go no go kind of a decision for somebody to be in the company if it's about your non-negotiable values. So we often say, if you want to call out integrity, trust, right? They're your non-negotiables, right? They're your reason for being, right? It's not nothing great if you're saying I'm high on integrity,
yeah,
right? it's
yeah.
it's your definition of existence. But core values are what you're constantly striving and as a company making sure it is
Mm,
reflecting. Now
mm,
wherever you expand, wherever your team is located, these core values and the importance given to these core values is going to be constant, right? So if you're talking about customer centricity, whether a delivery team is sitting in India, a business team is sitting in the US, you know that customer is the most important thing.
mhm, mm,
Again, I'll go back to the Zappos example, right? One thing that I saw live when I was interning with them was uh, they're high on customer centricity, right? And Tony Say also mentions about this in his book. They're high on customer centricity. So there you see somebody calls the call center to return the shoes, right? The first thing they do is, okay, we'll give you the return. They'll return the money instantly, even before collecting the shoes from the
yes.
person.
Mm,
And then they talk about, okay, what was the problem?
mm,
Okay, because they don't want the customer to go through that pain of trying to explain and trying to convince you.
correct.
Now,
Correct.
that is the core in the company, and everybody is actually reflecting that value.
Mm,
Likewise, irrespective of where you are, which department you're in, which geography you're in, your values actually reflect the culture that you want to create in the company,
mm,
and how could change based on the culture of that place.
mm.
And
Yeah.
when I say culture, it's
Yeah.
the that regional culture, right? How do we handle conflicts? We are going to be candid organization where we can call things out and sit down and resolve. Now
Mm,
conflict resolution is a given what I'm saying about a company, saying
mm,
that we are going to talk about our conflicts, we're going to be candid,
mm,
we're going to be respectful but direct,
mm.
and make sure we resolve our issues. Now, if that is the core value in the company, how you implement it in a Germany would be very different from how you'll implement it in a
Correct.
UK to how
Correct.
you'll implement it in the US. But the core value still remains the same because
Absolutely.
that's what you want to stand for as an organization.
Very well said.
So I
Very
think
well.
defining these as to how they serve you and uh, getting very clear as what is the job to be done there, how you do it is what remains. local for whichever geography or whatever team they are part of.
Well said. Well said. And my last question, back to your book. What is the one key lesson from Hope is Not a Strategy that you believe every leader must internalize?
Oh, I think biggest thing is culture is not a HR agenda.
Yeah,
Culture has to be a CEO agenda.
right.
Culture building in the company is as important and as critical for the growth of the company than anything else, right? You can have fantastic strategies, but nothing will work if you don't have the right culture in the company. So culture is CEO agenda,
Well said.
and it has to be deliberate. So
Absolutely. And on that note, Sesha, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. I mean, as you were talking, I was reminded of our first conversation, and it's amazing how the Fulbright scholarship, got you so many doors opened that you actually were able to study culture not just in one country but across so many countries. Thank you for talking to me about your book. Hope is Not a Strategy. We covered a lot of ground on culture. We spoke about the dilemmas resolution framework, which is so well explained by you in our conversation. We spoke about defining purpose and identity. We also spoke about what some science can be to understand where the culture might be broken or misaligned. You also shared with me some of your thoughts on early stage startups and culture. And finally, we also spoke at some length about how you can have a consistency in global culture in organizations that are spread across multiple countries in the world. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
thank you so much, Shitosh. Thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.